Well, good afternoon and welcome to our new knowledge session. My name is Sandy Ratliff. I am with Virginia Community Capital. If you're not familiar with us, we're a community development financial institution providing lending, investing, and community innovation services. We are excited to be a partner in this program with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and the town of Abingdon. And this program started in 2014 to support Washington County Business Challenge program, which we are getting ready to launch our eighth annual Washington County Business Challenge. And I'm sure that Jenny our guest today, will share a little bit more on how that helped her. Now, I wanted a little housekeeping as we get started. Today's session will be recorded, and it's for training and educational purposes, and will be uploaded to the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator's Facebook page and to our YouTube channel, New Knowledge, where we have well over 100 videos, training sessions available there that are archived for your on-demand services whenever you want. Also, in order to keep the webinar flowing, we have muted everyone, but we want to hear from you. So if you have a question for our presenter today, if you would please post those in the Q&A or chat feature, we will address those at the end of the session. Today, we have the 2020 winner of the Washington County Business Challenge, Jenny Carlisle with Crafts on Main. Jenny's going to share how she started her business right at the start of COVID hit and had to totally revise her business plan and how she was going to move forward. So Jenny, I thank you for coming, and I look forward to learning how you have been able to survive during the COVID.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. My name, as Sandy said, is Jenny Carlisle, and I'm the owner of Crafts on Main, which is a fabric and craft retail shop on Main Street in Abingdon. And I opened my shop in February of this year, so right before all the insanity that has been 2020 began. And I've been asked to share how I pivoted my original plans and have actually been able to thrive this year in my brand new business by making cloth face masks and offering curbside pickup and selling ready-made craft kits. Oops, I'm using the wrong computer. Okay, so for background, I took over the lease of the space that since the 1980s has been Janine's quilt shop. And I spent the entire month of January cleaning and painting the space. And I had taken out a fairly sizable business loan at the beginning of the year to get a current stock of inventory and all the equipment that I needed. And I had just opened in February. And I was counting on the fairly stable economy to help me launch my business when everything suddenly took a very scary nosedive and spiraled into these unknown waters. I went from, hey guys, my new business just opened, to what? Corona what? In 3 weeks' time. So most of the Main Street shops in Abingdon were closing to the public at this time, and nobody really knew what to do. And then the government started offering the grants to help businesses out. But I couldn't get one because they were asking for last year's documents. And, you know, I'm a new business, so obviously I didn't have that stuff. Or they were asking for payroll information. And my original plan was to not start paying myself until later in the spring. So I didn't have that information either. So there I was, a brand new business with loads of startup costs, startup money invested, and a business loan that needed to be paid. And, you know, suddenly the world was going into lockdown. I couldn't just temporarily close and wait it out because I didn't have much of a financial cushion to start out with. So what could I do? There really wasn't much of a safety net for me. I had this big fat business loan with all the startup costs for all the things. And I had the lease on my building that I had just had to put a deposit and, first month's rent, and then all the utilities that required deposits to start up. So right at the beginning, I had all these additional expenses that, an established business might not have had right then. And then I had the inventory that I had bought. Fabric is expensive. Each bolt has like 15 yards of fabric on it. So it's like a quantity of 15 for each thing. So you need a whole lot in order to have any sort of variety for the customers. And then I had the question of momentum. How do I build a customer base right in the middle of a crisis or right at the beginning of a major crisis? So in the beginning, when everybody was closing except for essential businesses, it occurred to me that the only chance I had at not having my business loan go delinquent and not losing the lease for my shop and not having to quit really before getting started was that I had to become essential. I had to become essential in my community. So how could I build a business that is essential to the community, and what could I do that would ensure the survival of my business in good economic times, but also in bad times? Those are the questions that I was thinking about. And seriously though, shouldn't those be the questions that we're all thinking about when we write our business plans in the beginning? How to survive during tough times, pandemic or not, Okay, so the pandemic started and businesses were closing their doors to in-person shopping. And the word going around was all about curbside pickup and online ordering and Zoom classes and so on. And those things are all really well and good. And they all do play a really important part in keeping businesses afloat right now. But my problem was, well, who's going to order from my website when nobody even knows who I am yet? In order for somebody to buy from my website, they have to know about my website for one, and they have to go there on purpose for two. So I knew that very few people were about to do that. Otherwise people will just do a Google search for what they're looking for, and they're most likely going to end up on Amazon or something like that. And I can't compete with Amazon. Even more so, I didn't even have all of my inventory entered into my POS system yet. As a new business, I was still working on that. So for me to start suddenly selling those things online on my website that nobody even knew about, with inventory that wasn't even entered yet, it just seemed like a daunting task. I'm a one-person business. I don't have an active partner. I don't have any employees. I can't afford a CPA. And my young children are at the shop with me every day during the day. So, that's a lot. I'm really overwhelmed, and frankly, I'm in a little over my head. So, while I absolutely do believe that having a viable, attractive, modern functioning website is super important for businesses to have in order to weather the storms long term. And I do believe that selling online is a fantastic solution, and it really will help us all with long-term sustainability. I knew that it wasn't going to be an immediate solution to keep my business afloat right away, hang on. So I needed something that would deem my business essential in my own community. I can't compete with Amazon online, but I can compete with them for my little storefront territory of Main Street in Abingdon, Virginia, right? So how could I provide something to my community that they would want to get from me, that will help my small business stake its little Main Street claim in a world where small businesses are eaten up by bigger fish every day, even in good times, The answer might be different for someone else's business, but I think that the overarching idea remains, and that is to use the current situation to your advantage. In this case, use the pandemic to your advantage and not as your excuse. Well, as I was trying to figure out what in the world I was going to do, a former sewing student of mine texted me and she said, "Hey, I know you're probably overwhelmed right now, but one of my relatives works in a local pharmacy and they're really concerned about having the proper PPE to keep themselves safe during this. So do you think you could make 7 face masks for them for the pharmacy?" Oh my goodness. I thought, seriously, I really didn't feel like I had time to do any sewing right then. I'm facing this major crisis in my brand new business, but she had asked as a friend and it was only 7. So how long would that take? So I told her I would do it. I looked up a pattern online and I made the masks and I gave them to the pharmacy for free. Well, that's great. But then the pharmacy asked for some more and they said that they were willing to pay. My pattern needed tweaking and I didn't quite have it down yet, but I felt like I was being helpful to somebody in their time of need in what I thought at the time was probably this really small, insignificant way. Okay, fine. So I had made a few masks in between trying to figure out how to move my new business online and get some traffic that way. And then someone came into the shop and said they had heard from their pharmacy that I made really nice face masks. Well, yeah, I've made a few. Will you make some more? I suppose I can. At that point, I was looking at it very reluctantly, but I have a hard time saying no to people. So, and then somebody else came in with the same story and somebody else. And then it dawned on me, oh, what is everybody panicking about right now? Besides toilet paper, it was PPE. So duh, I'm a fabric shop. I have fabric. I have sewing machines. This could be it. I could make some masks to help me make ends meet. But it didn't just help make ends meet. I had found a need in my community that I could fill and have my business become essential in my little community. So my doors remained open by filling a need in my own community, and my brand new business was thriving. People were coming in for masks and saying, "Oh, wow, I didn't even know your shop was here. This is great." So it sort of had this domino effect of bringing attention to the town that, hey, I'm here, my new business is here. And it allowed me to let people know what I offer and drum up some attention for the classes that we have in the shop, all while filling this need and paying my bills. I'm sorry, I've been forgetting to switch the slides. Okay, so I was going through this thing of how do I become essential? And as you see on the screen, which I forgot to switch, idea that I had was to find a need in your own community and act on it right away. So for the, oh my goodness, FedEx is here. Hang on. I'm sorry. Pause. Sandy, hang on. They're knocking on my door. I'll be right back.
No problem. You're running a business. We understand. That'll give everybody an opportunity to write down a couple of questions or put in Q&A some questions you may have for Jenny.
Awkward. I'm sorry. Okay. Where was I? Okay. So for the a full 2.5 months of spring, I was making masks before shop hours and after shop hours every single day. And I was still selling out daily. So there would literally be this line of people on the sidewalk waiting for me when I opened the shop every day. I mean, it was incredible. I'm a fabric shop, right? You know, I'm not selling tickets to a 1980s Bon Jovi concert, but that's what it felt like. Fabric shops don't usually need crowd control, but I actually had to enforce the fewer than 10 inside at a time rule a few times. Sorry, Fedex. And even now, 9 months into this thing, the mask craze has slowed down significantly, but I'm still, 9 months later, I'm still making and selling, you know, over 200 masks a month. Okay, where am I? Okay, so how do businesses who don't sew stay or become essential without totally forsaking their business model? That's a good question, right? The answer is we need to find a need and figure out how you can fill it. That seems easy enough, but what does it look like for the average business? How do you use the pandemic to your advantage and not as your excuse? Let's look at the mask making example for a minute. I sew, right? So it seems obvious for me to be involved in that. But there's more to it than that. The metal nose pieces that I get, that I use for the masks, for example, I get those from a small business who normally manufactures gun parts. And they also found a way to use the pandemic for their business instead of just throwing their hands up and saying, oh, well, there's nothing we can do right now. You know, they already had the equipment to cut the metal. They already had the material, and it was just a matter of shifting their focus for a while and allowing for flexibility. Another example, so the world essentially ran out of elastic for a while, right? If any of you were also making some masks, you might have experienced the shortage in elastic too. Well, another small business that I do business with is a rope company, and their normal specialty is rock climbing ropes. But they had started making elastic rope to be used for mask making. And I carry it in the shop, and it sells much better than the traditional 1/4-inch elastic. You know, people actually prefer to sew with it versus the traditional stuff. So they're another example of a small business who they are not making the masks, but they were flexible enough to change with the currents and to use the current situation to their advantage. During normal times, those businesses who don't allow flexibility into their business plans are going to have a hard time staying relevant, you know, but during a global pandemic, unless you got a pretty sizable grant to carry you through for a while you sit in your easy chair, you know, unless you're if you're favoring the mindset of, well, there's nothing I can do right now, and if you're not willing to think creatively, well, you're going to have a problem. You need to be able to, or be willing to roll with the waves and change as the world around you changes. Okay, here I am. So there are companies out there who have been in business for over 100 years, right? And think of all the phases that our country has been in and has been through during that amount of time. We haven't always had favorable economies. We've had depressions that had a huge unemployment rate. We've had dust bowls, we've had droughts and hurricanes and fires and, earthquakes and whatnot, and so on. So if we can use these events or these trends or these phases that our world goes through to our favor, we should be able to be successful in our businesses too, right? Just like these other businesses who have been around for a long, long time. So I've mentioned how that mask making thing worked favorably for a gun manufacturing or gun part manufacturing company, and for a rope company, and for my fabric shop. But what does it look like if your business really doesn't have like any component that seems to lend itself to the virus? I still really feel like there are ways that you can use this situation to your advantage. If you have a lawn care company, for example, I feel like if you play up the pandemic in your advertising, something like, well, you're stuck at home with cabin fever. Well, let's create a backyard escape for you, right? Or a furniture store. I know your easy chair has been getting a lot of extra use this year. Let's replace it with something new, or even a gym, one of the business types that has had to be closed way more than others this year. I still feel like there's something you can do to use this virus or this situation to your advantage. Something like, I don't know, use our gym scorecards for exercises that you can do at home, and we will help you stay in shape during this virus, even from a distance. I don't know. I'm not in advertising, but the point is to use the virus as to your advantage and not as your excuse. Think about adapting and using what's going on this year in a complementary way to your business. And this whole thing might work out in your favor, to your favor, like it has for me. But if you're stuck in the mindset of, well, there really isn't anything I can do right now, well, then unless you happen to be, independently wealthy, or your grant was huge, you're going to sink. But if you're willing to spend the time to figure out and understand your corner of your market right now in the thick of it, you might be able to make all of this work out and come out positioned even stronger on the other side. This is something that if you are able to capitalize on it now, then when the quarantine lifts and things calm down, you might end up with an entirely new revenue stream or a whole new business pathway that you hadn't even intended, like I did. Your business can transform from one that's focused exclusively on in-person sales and services to one that approaches those sales from more than one angle, in person and online. Maybe your business can do its thing more remotely than you thought. Okay, so to look at this quote from Thoreau, right now, our present situation is life with coronavirus. So don't wait to make a move on something until this is gone, because, who knows what's coming next, really, Another thing that I've been doing that has helped me this year is to look at my competition. What are they doing, and what can I learn from them? Some of us have really been struggling this year, and some of us have been okay. look at the ones that are doing okay and figure out what it is that they're doing. The grants that people have gotten this year have been incredibly helpful and deeply meaningful to so many of us. But these businesses that are doing okay, are they okay just because they got a grant to carry them through? Or are they okay because they've come across something that works? Or if you see a business that's in that last category, one that's doing okay because they legitimately found a way to succeed right now, figure out what they have done. Find out how did they figure out what works. Research the businesses that have accomplished what you want to. And obviously, not all strategies will work from one industry to another, but use what you can and shift these strategies to work for you. Looking into the online sales thing, as I mentioned earlier, my dilemma was getting traffic to my website when nobody even knew about my website, you know? And while I have been listing my inventory on my website, I have yet to generate a sale by my website that is from somebody other than one of my regular customers, one of my local regular customers, you know, the ones that come into my shop anyway. And then some days they would just rather shop online instead of coming inside. But what I have found to be beneficial, however, as far as online sales from other people, is to use additional platforms in addition to my own website, and list curated groups of items on various other websites. I've used Etsy for one, and I've had good success selling sewing patterns from indie pattern companies on Etsy and things like that. And I've used the Facebook Marketplace with great success for high ticket items. And I've even had success selling small things like notions and things of that nature on eBay. So the point here is not just to use my own website for online sales, but to utilize online platforms that are already well known and well established and capitalize on sales that way too. With the ready-made craft kits that I use or that I sell, I've learned that I can typically put kits together for a fraction of the cost of what my wholesale suppliers will sell them to me for, which means, of course, that my profit margins will be a lot higher if I do it myself. Well, that sounds great. But back to the point I made earlier about me being a one-person shop, you know, who's in a bit over her head, you know, I don't always have the time to dedicate to putting kits together and typing out clear instructions that would make sense to other people. And some months I have the greatest ideas and I have the best intentions, but actually bringing those ideas to fruition, you know, sometimes it just isn't in the cards. So I do both. I make the kits when I can, because I know that will benefit me in ways like higher return. But I also am offering something that not other stores don't have. But I also buy kits from suppliers. And that way I have something to fall back on when I just don't have the time to put something together myself. So for me, I finally did receive a grant close to fall. But before that, you know, I didn't really have help. I had to be in business like I meant it and figure out how to survive as if my entire business depended on it, because it did. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, right? Well, I think it's the same thing in tough situations. If you have a savings, or if you have some help, or if you know that you will be okay writing things out for a while, then you might not be quite as likely to hustle like you mean it than somebody who has everything to lose. And I had everything to lose. My fight or flight response had kicked in full steam and I was all in. So if I had waited around for the storm to calm or for someone to come along and help me while I complained about, oh, I'm so helpless, how helpless I was during the situation, then I wouldn't be the one here today sharing with you about how to make it through a major crisis. The grants are incredible. And in many cases, they are completely responsible for saving small businesses. But if they allow you to become lackadaisical, well, then there's a bigger problem than the virus. Okay, so moving along, another thing that I've been doing this year is thinking about how being a consumer has changed during this crisis. And something is changing in the way that customers are thinking, right? So I think we need to be thinking about how can we adjust to meet our consumers where they are. And this is where the curbside pickup and the online sales shine, as people are looking for ways to have the least amount of contact with other people as possible. But what about when that doesn't work? Not all of my 75-year-old customers are going to be able to shop online successfully, right? And a lot of 75-year-olds sew and still sew. So how can I keep that customer feeling safe while still offering something of value for her? This is where the prepackaged kits and the strategic shop displays come in. So my line of thinking is, if I can figure out what items I carry that are most in demand right now and group those items together in a location in my shop that will allow people to get in, find what they want, and get out of my shop without having to spend much time there, then I feel like I will be successful in serving both of those populations. So I've been following my sales trends really closely. And every time I notice that one particular item is selling more than others, I've been moving that item and items that go along with it closer to the major traffic flow in my shop. And I've also been trying to create groupings of items that all correspond and can be used together so that the time each person spends in my shop is shorter. Not that I don't want people spending time browsing through everything that I have to offer, but for those people that are specifically looking for kits or for mask making supplies, those are the items that I'm putting front and center, so that when that 75-year-old customer comes in, there isn't a lot of other traffic in my shop and she can take her time and feel safe while she's doing so. Okay, so the mask thing certainly can't go on forever, right? At some point, everybody will have enough, or we won't need to wear them, maybe. So that area of my business that has been so beneficial for me is going to stop, right? This is most likely just a short-term function for me. We can hope. So what am I going to do next? How can I avoid losing the momentum that my shop has gained from this situation? How can I keep the essential to my community status that my business has worked hard to gain? I don't know. This is something that I'm still working on, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think it's going to take the form of the kits that I offer. I've been creating these Kit of the Month kits where I put I provide all of the materials and the instructions needed for my customers to create something new each month. And I think that it keeps the same people coming back over and over with regularity. So I think that will be probably one of my winning ideas, I hope, for sustainability. And another thing I'm probably going to do is to continue offering something for sale that sort of has to do with what I sell, but it appeals to a different group of people. Using the mask example, people who don't sew have been coming into my fabric shop to buy masks. So this has actually had a really good conversion rate for me. It's, wow, you make these? My grandma used to sew. Do you think you could show me how to do it? And then, of course, that's a perfect opportunity for me to talk about the classes that we offer. So in the beginning, I mentioned that I knew in the beginning that online sales weren't going to be this immediate business saving solution for me. But I do think that it's something that's really important for the long term. Our customers and consumers going to change how they shop even after the pandemic passes. Some people are probably still going to prefer shopping online even when this is over with. And seriously, I would love to be selling things while I sleep and while the shop is closed, right? So this is definitely something that I'm working on. I've been looking and thinking about my business model as a whole and trying to gauge if the model that I started with is going to continue to make sense even after things return to normal. What things should I be shifting? What do I need to ditch? And what do I need to add in order to position me as the strongest player that I can be, so that I'll be able to operate my business whether we have a pandemic or not. So to summarize, the addition of the ready-made items such as masks right now, and hopefully something else later, I'm not quite sure what it will be yet, but hopefully I'll come up with an idea of something ready-made later to offer. And the kits that people can come in without having to spend a lot of in-person time in my shop. Those things, while still offering a decent stash of products that people can come in and browse through. Whatever the case may be, keep in mind to reevaluate the assumptions that you made when you started your business as far as what you did and did not plan to offer. I hadn't initially planned to offer masks, obviously, but anything pre-made really. So this is something that I added to my business model, and I think that it's something I will continue to do in the future with a different product. Think about what makes sense during this crazy year and what you need to adjust. I see a lot of businesses using this time purely as a damage control time, just kind of hanging around waiting for things to get back to normal. And I feel like that mindset is really going to put them behind. What we should be doing is seizing this chance to reestablish our businesses in our own markets, or in my case, to establish my business in my market. And we should be learning how to make ourselves into better entrepreneurs and really leveraging this very rare time of flux and unknowns, so that when the world starts moving again, we can fly past the ones that didn't adjust. So a few months ago, these changes that we were having to make in our businesses looked like they were just going to be temporary, right? Something that we needed to endure or get through for a few months before things got back to normal. But now, even if things do eventually get back to the old normal, I still want to shift my business focus from these temporary fixes and these Band-Aid solutions to an approach that is a lot broader. Something that will include these additional revenue streams that I hadn't initially planned for. So keep an open mind. Don't get stuck in the mindset of, well, that's not really part of my business model, so I'm not going to go that route. The world is a really scary place right now. And the businesses or the grants that many businesses have been able to get have made all the difference in the world for the short term. But what would happen to your business if you didn't have that safety net? As I mentioned, it was basically the fall before I received any assistance. So, this is a sink or swim situation. And I knew that if I didn't figure out something that worked, I would have been in that sink category really quickly. And I didn't want to be there. So for me, the mask making worked because I approached it as if the survival of my business depended on it. I approached it as if keeping my doors opened wasn't going to happen unless I went all in. For you or for other businesses, it might be something else, but I feel that it's that approach that is universal. You have to approach it like you mean it, not just, oh, well, maybe I'll try this. I don't know. Okay, well, thank you for listening to me share a little bit about my first year in business. And I hope at least some of it has been helpful to somebody. Thank you.
Great job, Jeannie. And I hope that folks, I've got a couple questions, but if you have questions for Jeannie, please post those in the Q&A or the chat. But and you can leave your information up there, or you just hit the stop sharing, however you want to. I'll let you be in control. You noted that e-commerce site and a point of sale was something that you had in place or were putting in place when COVID hit. Can you share how you got it up and running and maybe what services you use for in the event that we have anyone tuning in and seeing this session that might give them spark some ideas?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a website for the shop, and that's something that I had in place before the virus came along. But it was essentially just that. It was a website, and it looked pretty, and it had a shop section, and it had a section of where you could book our classes. But, as I mentioned, who's going to go to it if you don't even know what I offer? So that's where sites like Etsy.com and the Facebook Marketplace and eBay, those e-commerce sites that everybody knows about and they're already up and running and well established, those are the avenues that really have made a difference for me as far as online sales. Not just relying on my website for people to come and find something and buy, but utilizing the tools that, they're already working for millions of people. So taking advantage of systems that were already in place, I think that's a good way to go. Does that help?
Yeah. And I know that it seems like the trend now is to go to more paperless checkout systems where you don't even touch anything right, because of the fear for COVID. Now, I assume from some of your aging customers that might be a little bit more challenging, but I'm glad that you're embracing this.
Yeah, I have a Square system for my point of sale, and I absolutely love it. I don't actually have to touch anything that they touch, and they don't have to touch anything that I touch. And because there's no keypad, they stick their card in the top, they're not actually touching my machine. So it's a new system, and every single customer who uses it, I have to say, put your card right there. You know, I have to explain how to use it, but then they all say, oh, that's cool. You know, and I do still take checks from the group of people who still writes checks, but that's not the majority of people. You know, most people have a card.
Gotcha. Now, do you collect contact data for your customers? And do you also direct them to your online platforms to visit?
I do. For example, the classes that we have, a lot of times people will come in and say, hey, do you have a flyer with the classes that you offer? And sometimes I do, but I don't usually print a whole lot of them. I usually will say, it's on our website, you know, all the classes that we have, it's on our website, go there, or go to the Facebook page and see the events. So I do direct people there. And then, let's see here, oftentimes I don't know, I try to encourage people to visit our Facebook page and engage with us with social media. But, you know, it works a lot of the time, but it's really a demographic that it does work for, and then another demographic that it will never work for. You know, so that's where the flyers and things like that come into place.
I will say that I have a couple of your masks, and they not only are great quality, but they look great. They're not that stale, sterilized look, which I appreciate. One other question that I have is, what would you consider to be your top 3 tips that you could share about starting and operating a business that hit you between the eyes this year?
My top 3 tips. That's a really hard question. I think, as I mentioned, you know, going in full steam, using the fight or flight response, that if I don't do this really seriously right now, it's not going to work. Using that response instead of just, you know, a more relaxed, well, let's try this, see if it works. Because if I had just, with the masks, for example, if I had just stopped at the masks for the pharmacy that I initially made, or if I was, you know, well, I don't really want to do that. That's not what my shop is about, you know, but just jumping on board with both feet and trying as hard as you can. I think it seems kind of obvious and cliche, but really, if I went into it more relaxed, it wouldn't have worked, or wouldn't have worked to the volume that it worked. So that's one. Being careful with who you accept help from is another. As a one-person business, I need help really badly, but I'm very careful with who I agree to get help from. Sometimes people offer help because they have great intentions, and it would either steer me in a different direction or attempt to steer me in a different direction than where I want to be headed, or their help really would be more work than it's worth for me. You know, so be careful with who you accept help from. Can I stop at 2?
Is that the expression? If it's too good to be true, it usually is.
Right.
So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That was only 2, but that's all I've got.
That's good. I don't see any other questions pop up in our Q&A and chat, but as I said, this session is being recorded and will be up on the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubators Facebook page, and also on our YouTube channel, New Knowledge. I mentioned that because we have, when you were talking about e-commerce, to help some of our Main Street businesses, not only in Abingdon, but throughout Virginia, we've done a number of e-commerce workshops over the last 6+ months. So those are available. If you're not online, I highly recommend that you consider that. Especially if you rely a lot on foot traffic, that might be a way that you can increase or diversify your sales channels. But those are available for anyone to view. But Jenny, I'd like to thank you for taking time and sharing your expertise and what's going on for you this year. I know it's not what you planned on when you pitched at the Washington County Business Challenge in last March, but it is what it is, and you've done a great job getting through this. And I'd also like to thank all of those that attended today for joining us. It's amazing they're from different parts of Virginia. So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. I will note that our next session will be in January, and that will be on January the 6th, and it will focus on business planning. We've started doing a session on business planning at the first of the years because we feel like people now, okay, here's a new year, here's my new Year's resolution. And I am a firm believer in having that business plan. Actually, as a representative of a lending agency, we won't even consider looking at a business without some type of a business plan to see if you have it well thought out. So that's something to consider. So I hope to see you on January the 6th. It will be again on business planning, and our friend Gary McGow with Bristol Organization, and also Gary volunteers at the Bristol Chamber to manage their entrepreneurship program, will be leading that session. I think I have a couple of partners on with me today on this series. I didn't know if any of you all want to say anything or make any comments before we sign off. They're quiet now.
Well, you know, I said before everybody came on, Jenny has evolved greatly, and I think one of the things that, you know, I was a small business owner for 30 years, and one of the things that impresses me is that you didn't, in your mind, you didn't look for a reason to quit. You committed to the business no matter what. And I think that small business owners have to commit no matter what if they're going to be successful. So I applaud you in your efforts.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, thanks again. I hope everybody stays warm. It is definitely cool in Abingdon, Virginia, the last couple of days. I am waiting and counting down till spring 2021. But again, Jenny, thanks a lot for sharing and leading the session today. And I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, and be good because Santa Claus is watching. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.